alaikum. How are you all? I hope you must be having a wonderful time. In the previous class, we had touched upon some of the most prominent key features of language. Today, I'm going to switch my explanation to the design features of language. The design features of language were advocated and propounded by Charles Hockett. Now, Charles Hockett had an opinion. He opined that on the basis of these features, one can understand the overall operational criteria of a language, and how a language functions, how it operates, and on the basis of how many features it is constructed and constituted. So, my job today is to list all these design features one by one. So let's begin our explanation one by one. The very first design feature of language is directional reception. Directional reception means that as a speaker, when I speak, I transmit my messages all over. And as a listener, my job is to comprehend the message that is directed towards me. For example, if there is an interaction going on and there are many speakers and listeners, so over there, it is the function, it is the essence of a listener who is listening to a conversation, and it is up to him how he can understand that the particular message was directed at him. So it is up to the listener. The job of a listener is to understand that which speaker transmitted a particular message towards him and how he has to understand that message. Because in conversations, in normal situations, there are multiple messages going around. So one as a listener has to understand that what was the message that was directed towards him. And that's the first design feature of language. Let's move towards the next design feature. The second design feature that I'm going to explain is transitoriness. It means that language is ephemeral. Ephemeral means that language is temporary. Now, you must remember one thing, that writing came quite recently. There was no concept of writing in the primitive eras, in the medieval eras. And there was a tradition by the name of oral tradition that was being practiced. And that oral tradition continued until very recently. And that's the reason that language transmitted and transferred from generations to generations with the help of oral tradition, and writing was introduced quite later. So one can say that writing might be a permanent mode, permanent feature, but still one can say that the foundation of language is based on its transitory nature. It is not something permanent, because whatever I may use, whatever may I produce, whatever I may articulate, my words and sentences evaporate at that immediate moment, because I transmit a word, a sentence with the help of sound waves. And when these sound waves reaches to the ear of a listener, and when the listener comprehends the message, the words and sentences are vanished in the thin air. So that's the beauty and essence of language. Let's move towards the next design feature. The third design feature of language is interchangeability. Interchangeability is a feature of language where you can switch meanings. The writers, the poets, they employ this interchangeability aspect in literary texts. For example, I can say, I am a man. At the same time, I can also state, I am a lion. Now, why I can say that? There is a term often used in literary perspective, and that is play of words. And this is a prominent feature of language, a characteristic of language with the help of which you can switch between meanings. You can come up with anything that comes to your mind. Writers, literary writers, they often use this technique in a literary text in order to achieve an aesthetic sense. And that's something with the help of which we can play with the words. I can call myself a male, I can even call myself a female, despite the fact that biologically I am a male. Why? Because with the help of language, you can play with the words. And that's the beauty of language. This brings me to the discussion of another feature. And that is semanticity. It means that language is understandable. It is comprehensible. Language has been designed as such that anybody who wishes to acquire or learn a language, he can do it by following a particular route or pattern. So it means language is comprehensible. It is understandable, and that's the reason why we learn languages, how we learn other languages apart from our first languages, native languages. And the reason is that human beings are innately born with a capacity, with a capability to acquire or learn a language, not necessarily their first language, but also some other languages. For example, we have learned English language, we are learning English language. If it was not possible, we would still be relying on our first native language. And that's the reason why language is called a flexible tool. It is something with the help of which you can impart, you can communicate, you can express, you can convey. And the reason is that we can understand any language, we can learn and acquire any language that we want to. And that's the essence of language. Let's move towards the next design feature. Reflexiveness. Now, what is reflexiveness? Reflexiveness means to reflect, evaluate, and assess. It means that one can look back at his utterances, sentences, words. There might be a situation, an odd situation, where a speaker must have or might have used a taboo word, something derogatory, which was not appropriate to the particular context, and by this feature, by reflexiveness, he can go for the rectification of language. Language can be rectified and corrected if you reflect back on the language. And this feature only exists in language as opposed to the animal communication system, where this characteristic and quality is lacking. So you must remember one thing, that you can even reflect back. You can even evaluate and you can look back at how language is organized. Now, this feature is lacking in other communication system, and it is only language that enjoys a leverage over other communication systems of the animals. Let's move towards the next. Preverification. Now, preverification means that language does not necessarily can be or should be utilized for speaking the truth. It can also be used for telling lies. It can also be used for projecting false information. It can also be used for propaganda. Now, language is something that's so flexible that with the help of which you can even come up with truth or lies. You can do anything with the language, and that's the reason. If you just quote an example of the media, what the media is doing right now. Media is projecting false information. It is creating a perception. It is creating a propaganda. It is propagating something negative. And how they do it? That's with the help of language. And the feature that's responsible for this projection is prevarication. With the help of this feature, you can tell lies, you can come up with false information, you can propagate something negative. That's not true. That's the another feature. Let's move towards the next feature. Learnability. Now, what is learnability? Learnability means that language is something that can be learned. Now, a child, when he's growing up, he follows a particular route to learn a language. Same goes for the second language learner. Same goes for a foreign language learner. We have learned English language since childhood, and we have been doing it by following a particular pattern. When we were growing up, we were at the same time simultaneously acquiring our L1 and also L2. And the reason for this is that human beings are designed as such that they can learn a language. So language is a phenomenon that can be learned regardless of its complexities. Besides all the complications involved, one can easily learn a language. Learning a language means that you are learning a second or a foreign language. Second and foreign language. Now, second language and foreign language means that it is your L2 and this is your FL. Foreign language. You can go for both of them. Why? The reason is that language in itself has this flexibility. It's not something rigid. It is quite flexible. It invites the learners to learn itself. Now, this is the reason why we can digest another language, and the reason is that language, every language, regardless of the medium, whatever it is, we can learn a language. So this was all about the design features of language, and I would like you people to stay updated, keep watching my videos, and do subscribe my channel. We'll see each other in the next session. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you very much.